About a year ago, I watched Hilda for the first time, and I was immediately captivated by its animation. Now, I don't know about any of you, but whenever I thought of 2D rigging, I thought of stiff and janky looking animation. So imagine my surprise when I found out that Hilda was primarily made using 2D rigs. Intrigued, I looked into the software used to create Hilda, and I found Harmony. And I decided right then that for my next project, I was going to learn to create 2D rigs and find out for myself just how versatile they could be. For this project, I decided that I'd make rigs for characters from existing shows. Considering I'd be learning rigging and a new form of animation from scratch, I didn't really want to worry about designing completely new characters for these tests. Now, if you've already read the title of this video, then you've probably already figured out that I chose to create rigs for Hilda and Joanna. They are, after all, my two favorite characters from the show that inspired me to learn 2D rigging. For my purposes, I decided to create simple 360 rigs. I didn't worry about creating additional hands or head tilts because these were going to be simple tests. In all honesty, I didn't even need to flip my character and make a 360 rig, since I knew from the start that I'd only really need a front, 3/4, and side view. However, I felt it would be a good idea to get at least a full understanding of the Harmony rigging basics, and I felt I could achieve this with simple 360 rigs. Now you're probably wondering, what was I planning on animating? After watching Hilda, I created these little wallpapers for personal use. They're basically just photo batched elements and upscaled images from the show. I thought they were pretty cool, and I thought they'd be cool if they were also animated. So my idea was to create a short looping animation where the character would walk on screen, strike a pose, and then walk off screen. Now, I know Hilda is typically animated at a higher DPS, but for this project, I animated on 3s or even 4s for bigger physical movements like walking, and I saved 1s and 2s for smaller movements on stationary or close to stationary characters, like a jaw moving when talking, or the secondary motion of clothing her hair. As you can imagine, as a 2D rigging beginner, I ran into quite a few problems when creating my first rig. These problems became incredibly apparent once I got to the animation stage. The rig kept breaking in places I had not intended, and I had to do a decent bit of cleanup after the fact. Opting to avoid using a bad rig for longer than necessary, I decided to change my initial plan for Hilda's animation. I decided to make a simpler and shorter running loop animation based on the Hilda test footage, rather than the aforementioned walk on and off loop. Thankfully, I did not have these issues with Joanna. Learning from my previous mistakes, I managed to create a much more functional 360 2D rig. If you're interested in seeing my process, check out the rigging time-lapse video. The links can be found in the end cards or in the video description. Now, before you guys see the final product, I wanted to briefly highlight a few important things I learned. First, rigs can be set up in a multitude of ways. How a rig is set up and what features it includes is completely dependent on what you want to make. Don't include stuff you won't use. In other words, if you're making a rig you plan to use, make sure it works for you. Second, 2D rigging is incredibly versatile, and I highly recommend you check it out if you are an animator. It speeds up the animation process by almost completely cutting out the rough and cleanup process of more traditional animation. I plan to use 2D rigs in combination with more traditional animation methods for personal projects coming in the future. Finally, these animations certainly are not perfect. They are tests after all, but I still hope you'll enjoy the final product. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback in the comments below, and thank you for watching if you've made it this far. Without further ado, here are the final results.